Hello and welcome. Today I want to try and go through a step-by-step guide to calculating how many calories you need to consume and the macronutrient setup of your diet. And within this, I'm hoping to try and offer recommendations for when you should cut and bulk, as well as other recommendations around things like supplements and water intake and micronutrients. Um, I've tried to make this quite a simplified guide, almost a step-by-step process that almost anyone can follow. Now, before I start, the guide itself is going to rely on some degree of estimations because it has to. We haven't got any data for you just yet. We don't know how your body responds to your diet. We don't know how many calories you are expending on a day-to-day basis. We can only take rough estimates of that. But at the end of the step-by-step guide, I'll offer some guidelines as to how we can start acquiring the data and use that data to get more accurate estimates around how to calculate our calories and macros. Now, the first step, we need some data to start off with. So we need to have your body weight. Now, I recommend weighing yourself, putting the scales on a hard, flat surface, weighing yourself ideally first thing in the morning without any clothes on. And you're going to want to weigh yourself quite regularly. I would recommend weighing yourself almost every single day, at the same time each day, the same place, without clothes on, in order to get an average body weight. And this will be how we will track progress, because ultimately you want to make sure that your diet is working. If you're trying to gain weight, you want to make sure you're gaining weight at the correct rate. Likewise, when it comes to losing weight, you want to make sure you're losing weight at the correct rate. Now, of course, we also want to try and track our training. If you're doing a lot of powerlifting, you want to track your lifts, but I feel like everyone already does this. But you also probably want to try and track your progress through photos. So I recommend trying to take photos fairly regularly, perhaps every week, every fortnight, but compare progress photos monthly. And bear in mind, month 1 to month 2 may not have a big difference, but month 1 to month 3 should be where you notice the difference. And if you have month 1 and 3, you can almost see where month 2 fits in. So I recommend trying to take some progress photos, trying to measure different body parts, just to try and make sure that what you're doing is working. So this is almost step 0. This is just setting the baseline. We need to know how much you weigh. We need to know what your starting point is. So now we know how much you weigh. We can calculate how many calories you need each day. Now, as I've said, this is going to be a fairly simplified and rough estimate in terms of calculating your daily calorie needs. And it's an estimate because we haven't got the data we need. We don't know exactly how many calories you are expending on a daily basis. But over the course of several weeks, we will be able to work that out. But at the start, we just need a rough estimate. We need a rough guideline. And this is what this will help us achieve. So the first step to figuring out how many calories you need is to figure out how many calories you need to stay at the same weight. So this is quite simple. Take your body weight in pounds and multiply it by 10. So for instance, a 200-pound man would take their body weight, 200 pounds, multiply it by 10, that's 2,000. And now they would multiply that body weight by these activity modifiers here. So for instance, if that was myself, I would take my body weight, multiply it by 10, and then I would multiply it by 1.4. I work in an office job. I don't really have a very active lifestyle. Now, one thing to point out, this modifier already incorporates your strength training. So it's already taking into account all the calories expended during strength training. So I train regularly, but I work in an office job, so I would multiply it by 1.4. If you work a very active job and train regularly, you would multiply it by 2. And that's the amount of calories you need. It's that simple. So that's the amount of calories you need to maintain your body weight, I should say. Um, Now, of course, if you're looking at this, you probably don't really want to maintain your body weight. You're probably wanting to increase your body weight or decrease your body weight, bulk up or cut. And that's where we make some adjustments now. So we know exactly how many calories you need to maintain your body weight. And it's worth making a note of that figure because we're going to refer to it in the future as well. Now, if you want to gain muscle, you generally speaking need to increase the number of calories you eat. And so you're going to want to probably add on about 500 calories per day. So that maintenance calorie that we worked out, you will add 500 calories onto it. Likewise, if you want to lose weight, you will take 500 calories off there. And the reason we do 500 calories is it's normally 500 calorie increase or decrease normally equates to about £1 gained or lost per week. Now, of course, if you are a 300-pound man, you're probably going to want to lose weight at a slightly faster rate. You may want to try and increase that to 700, 800 calories per day to try and lose weight at a little bit faster. If you're a 100-pound female, you probably want to decrease that. You probably want to make changes that are about 300 calories, maybe even a bit less. But 500 calories is a good rule of thumb. And you should aim to lose about 0.5% to 1% of your body weight per week. Sorry, that you should aim to gain or lose. I just said lose. So that's how you work out whether you want your daily calorie intake. So let's say you need to consume 2,500 calories per day as your base rate. You want to gain weight. You will simply add 500 and 3,000 calories per day is the amount you need to consume. Now, of course, that's assuming you know whether you want to gain or lose weight. Some people may be unsure, should I bulk, should I cut? So there's a few different ways you can work this out. Now, the first thing is health. Is it healthy for you to bulk? Should you really start trying to cut? Now, the waist size is a good indicator of whether you should actually bulk or cut. For men, your waist should be less than 37 inches. For women, less than 31.5 inches. Now, these guidelines are taken off the NHS website, but I think they are pretty good, actually. You don't really want to be exceeding these waist measurements because it's not going to be good for you at all. Now, to do this, you will simply measure your waist in the middle of at the midpoint between your ribs and the top of your hips. Now, I really don't recommend exceeding this waist size. Maybe if you are doing, say, a 16-week training program and you're bulking all the way through it and you've got 2 or 3 weeks left and you're already at 37 inches, maybe it may be worth just seeing the training program out. But really, I recommend against going above these guidelines, just for your general health. There's no reason to go above them, really. Now, some other considerations, if you're a novice athlete and you have very little powerlifting training, very little strength training, then you probably want to try and maintain your weight or bulk for the first 3 to 6 months. This is because novice athletes can gain strength very quickly. Their muscles, you will experience far faster hypertrophy as a novice than you would in any other stage in your lifting career. So I think it's better to avoid cutting in that instance. Get the most of your novice gains. Now, of course, if you are 300 pounds untrained, you're going to want to cut. What I'm saying about novices was a rule of thumb. If you are very obese, if you are very overweight, you're going to probably want to lose weight regardless of your training experience. So this is where the waist size sort of takes precedence. If you are 40-inch waist as a man, you're probably going to want to cut. If you're 38-inch waist as a woman, you're going to want to cut, even if you're a novice. So as long as it's healthy to maintain your weight or to bulk, as a novice, I recommend maintaining your weight or bulking. And finally, there are people who are classed as skinny fat. Essentially, you have low amounts of muscle and high body fat. So, you might have really skinny arms, but a big belly, skinny legs. And it's a bit awkward because you need to gain muscle. And to gain muscle, you're going to have to eat more and gain weight. But you also need to lose some body fat. And to lose body fat, you're going to have to cut, which will also limit the amount of muscle you can gain. So if you're skinny fat, I recommend really just maintaining. Get the maintenance number of calories you need and just maintaining. Because if you're skinny fat, you're probably not really trained. I would say a novice training program would be quite good for you. If you have been training, then it's probably worth maintaining your calories and re-evaluating that training to try and make sure actually you are doing the best you can. Because a novice training program would, over the course of, say, 3 to 6 months, build quite a bit of muscle on your frame. So that's what I would recommend. Now, once you are sort of at the end of a decent novice program, maybe an early intermediate style program, that's when you perhaps may want to reevaluate this and decide, okay, do I actually want to bulk now? Do I want to cut now? And you'll have a better idea as to should I bulk or cut. You're probably going to have to, let's say 3 months of a training program, reevaluated, bulk or cut. For 6 weeks, reevaluated again, bulk or cut again. And at that point, you'll probably have a fairly athletic figure. Now, you will have only been lifting properly with a decent diet for 6 months. But hopefully, at the end of the 6 months, you will look like someone who does lift, who has been lifting for 6 months. And that's the goal, really. So that's whether you should bulk or cut. And if you want to bulk, you take your maintenance calories and add 500. If you want to cut, you take your maintenance calories and lose 500 calories per day. And if you want to maintain, you just go off your maintenance calories. So that's step 1, calculating your daily calorie intake. And we've just done that. Step 2 is calculating your protein intake. Now this again is quite simple. Take your body weight in pounds, and that's how many grams of protein you will consume. For example, a 200-pound athlete should aim to eat 200 grams of protein. Now I'm going off more of a bro science recommendation here. There is a lot of research around protein intakes, and the research does tend to vary. Some research will recommend even 0.8 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass. So a 200-pound athlete may only have 180 pounds of lean body mass, and then they're meant to eat 0.8 grams of protein minimum per lean pound. So that would be about 150 grams of protein a day. Now, for me, we don't know how much lean body mass we have, and there's no harm in overshooting your protein intake. But there is perhaps some harm in undershooting because you need protein to progress. You need protein to help essentially repair your muscles, really. Again, that's a bro science simplification, but you need the protein. And there's no harm in overshooting it. A lot of protein sources are quite healthy, like meat and things, especially if it's fresh meat, it's quite good for you, really. There's a lot worse things you can eat for it. So I recommend 1 gram of protein per pound of body fat, per pound of body weight, I should say, because that also gives you a bit of wiggle room. If you are a little bit less than that, it doesn't really matter. If you're a bit over that, it doesn't really matter. It gives you that wiggle room. So that's step 2. Now step 3 is calculating your fat and carb intake. Now, we've got our daily calorie intake, and we know how much protein we need to eat. Now, every gram of protein is equivalent to 4 calories. You see, I've put them all here. 1 gram of carbohydrates is 4 calories, 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. So 1 gram of protein is 4 calories. So what you need to do is you need to take all your protein in grams and multiply it by 4. And that's how many calories you will consume of protein per day. So you can figure out how many calories you have left, and the remaining calories will be for fat and carb. So I've done an example here. So let's say you need to eat 3,000 calories per day, and you need to consume 220 grams of protein per day. Well, 220 times 4, because you've got 220 grams of protein, each gram of protein is 4 calories. So 220 times 4 means you will need to consume 880 calories worth of protein per day. Now that means if you need to eat 3,000 calories per day, 3,000 minus the 880 is 2,120 calories you have left. And those remaining calories will all go towards fat and carbohydrates. So now we need to actually calculate the fat and carbohydrate split. Now we've got two options. Option one is the simplest and the one I probably recommend initially starting out. And it's basically, you need to eat 2,120 calories worth of fat and carbs a day. So just plan a diet based on common sense principles. Like a nice, like a rice dish with fresh veg and fresh meat. That sounds pretty healthy. It doesn't sound bad for you. So work out the carbs and calories and the carbs and fats and the protein that you're going on, and just making sure that you get enough protein and your fat and carb don't exceed 2,120 calories per day. And you just use common sense. So something like a Big Mac, probably not really that good for you. Probably going to be quite high in fat. Probably want to try and avoid it. The rice dish, the fresh pasta dish, or the salads and things, great. So just base it off your common sense principle and your usual diet. You know what you like to eat, and you don't want a diet which you hate eating. So that's option one, and really is the simplest, and I think it works really quite well. Now, option two is actually calculating the actual split between fat and carbs. Now, this varies. Some people benefit from a high-fat diet. Some people benefit from a low-fat diet. A good baseline split, I think, is 25% of those remaining calories are for fat, 75% of those remaining calories are for carbs. So, for instance, the previous athlete we looked at in a previous slide, which is this one, 3,000 calories per day and 880 calories of protein. So they had 2,120 calories left for carbs and fat. So let's look at the fat and carb intake. This athlete, 2,120 calories left to consume. So I'm saying 25% of your calories are for fat. So 25% of 2,120 is 530 calories for fat. So you'll do 2,120 divided by 4. And that's how many calories for fat. If you're still unsure, just ask Google, what is 25% of 2,120? So that means you will have 530 calories for fat. Now, remember on the last slide, I said 1 gram of fat is 9 calories. So 530 calories divided by 9 gives 53 grams of fat per day. So that's how much fat you need to eat. So now we know how many calories we're consuming in protein, how many calories we're consuming of fat, and what our total daily calorie intake is. So all that's left is carbs. So the remaining, so we've got 2,120 calories for carbs and fat, 530 is fat, so 2,120 minus the fat calories will give us the calories for carbs. So in this instance, it gives 1,590 calories for carbs. So 1,590 divided by 4, because 1 gram of carbohydrates is 4 calories, will give us the number of carbs we need to consume, which in this athlete would be 398 grams. So there we have the split. So the athlete we're looking at needs to consume 3,000 calories per day, 220 grams of protein, 53 grams of fat, 398 grams of carbs. Now, the thing with option 2 is you could probably adjust it over time. Try other diets at 25% calories for fat, 75% for carb. Trial it for a couple of weeks, and then adjust the percentages to perhaps 30% fat, 70% carbs. Then try 20% fat, 80% carbs, and keep on adjusting until you figure out what you like. Now, this is part of the reason why I like option one, because you probably already know what sort of diet you already like eating. Um, if you consider whether your diet is currently high fats, high carbs, whether you feel good about your diet, whether you feel active, you could probably figure out actually, is this split working for me? And just go off what you know works and your common sense, really. But that's your fat and carb intake. And that's actually all of your calories and macros calculated. And you could probably leave it just there. But there are quite a few other things if you want to look at a comprehensive diet. And the next most important thing really is your fiber and micronutrient intake. Now, both of these are obtained from mainly fruit and veg. Now, the rough estimates, which are taken from the NHS website again, is 38 grams of fiber for men, 25 grams for women. That's per day. And they're not too bad, actually. I quite like those estimates from the NHS. And we can probably achieve this most easily by trying to eat 3 servings of fruit per day and 3 servings of veg per day. If you want to know what a serving looks like, Google NHS 5 a day, what counts? And it shows roughly what a serving of fruit and veg would be. It even includes some things like beans or something might be a serving of fruit and veg because it's got the fiber, it's got the micronutrients in it. But again, it can just be common sense. Like an apple is obviously a serving of fruit. A carrot is a serving of veg. It just common sense again. And the main thing is this is a minimum recommendation. If you could never really go wrong by trying to add in more fruit and veg to your diet. And by adding it in, you will achieve the fiber and micronutrients intake you need per day. So that's why I'm not breaking it down into all the different macronutrients, because actually, if you're getting the fiber intake, which you can try and calculate if you want to, then you're probably getting your micronutrients. But likewise, if you're eating a good amount of fruit and veg per day, even without looking at the fiber intake, you can be pretty sure that you're getting a decent amount of fiber and a decent amount of micronutrients. And that's really all you really need to know. A good amount of fruit and veg is always going to be good for you. So the next step is your water intake. And this is, again, quite easily. The simplest way, they're both quite simple. Take your body weight in pounds, divide it by 2. And that number is the amount of water you have to drink in fluid ounces. For example, if you weigh 200 pounds, this athlete weighs 200 pounds, we divide that by 2, we get 100. So they will have to drink 100 fluid ounces of water per day. The option 2, if you work in kilos, is take your body weight in kilos and times it by 33. And that's the amount of water you will drink in milliliters. Now, of course, you could look at what classes as I put water, but what classes as hydrating fluid? Like something like cordial squash probably counts. Even things like alcohol and Coke can count to some extent. People often used to drink a lot of wine and alcohol to try and hydrate themselves because the water wasn't particularly safe. But again, this is more about common sense. Alcohol is going to be, generally speaking, quite bad, whereas water is quite good. Things like milk and fresh juice are obviously all quite good as well. So that's water. The last bit is supplements. Now, supplements, I don't really see the point of a lot of times because actually, if you just eat fruit and veg, you're getting all of the nutrients you need. So, what supplements do you need for your body? Again, I'm not classing whey protein as a supplement. I'm classing that as a food. Everything else would probably be more of a supplement. Now, the only exception to this is creatine. Creatine you should consume about 5 grams per day. There's some research to say maybe 3 grams, maybe 4 grams, but 5 grams a day is what's done by the majority of people, and it's actually really quite cheap. There's no reason to not just go for the easy 5 gram per day recommendation. And that's it really, supplements 5 grams per day. Now, cheat days. So cheat days, these are optional. Obviously only really useful if you're cutting. And you've got two options. Option one is the simplest. So if you're cutting, let's say you have your maintenance calories at 3,000 per day. If you're cutting, therefore, you will be consuming 2,500 calories per day to lose a pound a week. So the first option is to just increase 1 day per week back up to your maintenance calories. So let's say every day would be 2,500 calories, except for Friday, which is 3,000. That's option one, nice and easy. Option two, for people who are a bit more anal about things, then you would look at it and think, okay, well, if I'm going to include a cheat day, I'm consuming 500 calories extra per week because that cheat day is where I'm eating an extra 500 calories. So we simply take that 500 calories, divide it by 6, because there's 6 days left in the week, and we'll get 83 calories per day. So what we'll do is we'll take away those 83 calories from the non-cheat days. So let's say your maintenance is 3,000 calories per day. So your cheat day, let's say a Friday, will be 3,000 calories, and your maintenance. All of the other days would normally be 2,500 calories, but those 500 calories you're dividing across. So you'll take away 83 calories per day on those non-cheat days, meaning your normal allowance now for non-cheat days will be 2,417 calories per day. This is quite a bit complicated for the sake of 100 calories per day or so. It seems a bit excessive to me. I'll just go for option one and just increase 1 day to maintenance and just leave it at that. And now step 8. This is the final step, really, and it is to make adjustments. So you've calculated your calories, you know your water intake, you know how much fruit and veg you should try and eat, you're taking your creatine, you've even programmed in your cheat day. Now you need to stick at that diet for 2 weeks. Measure your body weight almost every single day, same time, same place, every day, without clothes on, and take a note of that. And you'll be doing that for 2 weeks. Now we'll take an average weight for week 1 and an average weight for week 2. If you are not achieving your weight goal, then you need to make adjustments. So if you are trying to gain weight, but you've stayed the same weight, add in another 300 calories. If you're trying to lose weight, but you've stayed the same weight, take away another 300 calories. Likewise, if you have suddenly lost 2 pounds in 1 week, this is an average weight, and you only plan to lose 1 pound, then you probably need to increase your calories a little bit. And in doing this regularly, by trying to work, perhaps take an average for week 1 and then week 2, and then do another week and compare week 2 and week 3, and another week and compare week 3 and 4. And perhaps over time, you will then be comparing 2-week average with a 2-week average. So you'll take an average for week 1 and 2 and an average for week 3 and 4 and compare those. And over time, you will have a huge amount of data about how many calories you need to consume and how this affected your body weight. And that's how you make adjustments, and that's how you improve your diet. So at the start of this video, I was saying about how we are only estimating. We can't really get things that are that accurate. But by making these adjustments, we are accumulating a huge amount of data, and we are acting on that data to make our diet accurate. And that's it, really. That's the entire diet. And that's how you can probably last for a very long time. So really, just continue tracking your body weight and your calorie intake and just adjust as needed. Everyone is different. Everyone's lifestyle varies a bit. So just make those adjustments as needed. Now, this is a simplified guide. It's a bit bro sciencey, I'm not going to lie, but the bro science is sort of backed up by some clear research recommendations. And at times, say with the protein or the creatine is just simplified and works. Ultimately, I don't really care about trying to get things as particular as possible if what we're doing is already working just as well as if it was all particular. So I hope you like it. If you want to read on a bit more, I recommend reading the Muscle and Strength Pyramid for Diet by, I think it's Eric Helms. Um, his method of offering diet advice is very similar to the one I did, which is why I recommend it. He does offer quite a lot more in-depth analysis about what the research and things says, and also offers quite a bit of in-depth analysis about um, peaking and tapering for competitions, as particularly if you're a bodybuilder going into competition like water cuts and going into quite extreme levels of low body fat. He offers quite a lot of advice about that, and I definitely recommend reading it because I was quite shocked. I'm a bit naive when it comes to the bodybuilding requirements for competition. I've no real experience in that, but he does, and he offers a lot of advice and things about how it affects your health, your body, how you can try and mitigate some of those concerns. Is it worth it? So definitely read that for more information. And finally, I wanted to talk a little bit about training, how your training will be impacted by your diet. So the most obvious one is, we talked about it a bit before, if you're a novice lifter and you're maintaining or bulking or even cutting, you'll probably find you will increase in strength quite quickly. Um, in general, if you are bulking, you will always increase in strength quicker and for longer if you're cutting, and maintaining would be sort of in between. Now, if you're bulking, it's quite straightforward again. You should just expect, regardless of what stage lifter you are at, you should just expect to try and gain muscle mass, gain strength. That's quite common sense. If you're cutting, that's when things get a little bit more tricky. You probably want to make sure you're not on a super intense program. I'm sure there was a Smyslov, I think, squat program out there, which is supposedly super high volume and intense. There's some programs out there that are very intense, and you're not going to be able to manage them on a cut. Especially when you may struggle even on a bulk. So first of all, just to make sure your training isn't super intense. You don't want it to be too easy, of course, but it should be about standard for you. It should be about a standard level of volume and intensity that you're used to. And in terms of trying to gain strength, the goal should be, when you're cutting, to essentially maintain your strength. Now that may not happen. You may actually increase your strength, which is fantastic, but your goal is to maintain it. If you exceed that goal, great. Because if you are lifting 500 pounds and you weigh 240, well, if you are still lifting 500 pounds when you weigh 200, then that indicates actually you probably got a bit stronger. The fact that you're able to lift the same amount of weight at a lower body weight indicates you have more strength. So when it comes to training, focus on maintaining your strength. If you can increase it, increase it. Always get stronger if you can, but that's where your training should really be focused on. Now, what you could do is also try to incorporate perhaps some more bodyweight exercises. That can be a good way to help with your compliance and your motivation, because in that way you will see yourself getting stronger. For instance, if you could only do 5 chin-ups at 240 pounds, you're going to be able to do a hell of a lot more at 200 pounds. You can probably add quite a bit of weight at 200 pounds. So that's where bodyweight exercises can come in quite nicely, because those are the sort of exercises which you can progress quite nicely. So that's one option. It's not necessary, but it can be quite good for compliance. I've deliberately left out cardio here. You don't need cardio to lose weight. Realistically, if you're trying to lose weight, then your diet is all that matters. Now, having said that, exercise programs, fitness programs, strength training programs, they really help compliance. And if you're doing a strength training program or any sort of fitness program or any exercises at all, in addition to a diet, the diet is going to be far more successful. It's a diet that's driving the progress when it comes to losing weight, or gaining weight, but it's the exercise program which can help a huge amount in terms of making sure that success lasts long term and your compliance is there. So always try and do some degree of training program with your diet. Cardio isn't essential, but you may as well try and do it. If you're trying to, I would always recommend some cardio. Of course, if you're a couple of weeks out from a powerlifting competition, perhaps it's not the best time for it. But generally speaking, cardio or conditioning is quite good for health. And I'll have another video and article on my website about conditioning and cardio. But that's it, really. That's your diet. That's how you can figure out how many calories you need, how many macros you need, water, micronutrients, supplements, and also how it affects your training. So if you like it, please do like, comment, and subscribe. But please check out my website, slowlystronger.com. I've got quite a few other articles on there, including stuff about nutrition and training as well. So please do check it out. And that's it. I hope to see you in the next video.